Hi guys, welcome to another LivinginSAtv day video with these two amazing guests that I'm going to introduce to you guys later on the video. And today we are at the evolutionary studies here at Wits to showcase the amazing groundwork that these gentlemen are doing to showcase you our history, past history. Again guys, stay tuned because once again this video will blow your mind.
Interesting. So this is a deaf student tour that they are doing. This is so interesting. Never seen this before.
I'm Bernard Sipfell. I'm the University Curator of Fossil and Rock Collections. And today we are going to have a look at a very special facility that is not open to the public. It is a research facility, but I'm going to show you a little of that. So this particular laboratory is really important in terms of our understanding of very ancient human origins. For example, when we look at African paleoanthropology and the evidence for our early origins on the African continent, about 60% of that would be in East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia. And then the rest is here in South Africa. And of that, a large percentage, the greatest percentage, is right here in this particular facility. This is probably the best facility of its kind in the world, and we have separated out the fossil primates, including our ancestors or relatives, because I guess we think we're special, but that doesn't make us that much more important than the other animals that are just as important for our understanding of our origins. So if we have a look at those collections over here, these three racks with these little brown drawers, until 2008 they would have represented pretty much the entire collection. That's not much. You can fit that in the back of your car. And to date, most of those specimens would have been isolated. So you'd have a skull, you'd have a finger bone, you have ribs, you have a leg bone, all isolated, not necessarily associated with each other. With one or two exceptions. But after that, there was an increase in the number of discoveries, and we now have a greater understanding of how skeletons fit together, and we are very fortunate to now have a number of what we call skeletons, which might not look that complete to the public, but for us, compared to what we were looking at in the past, is quite complete. But the center of where everything started is this particular specimen here. It is called the Tong Child and was discovered in 1924 when Raymond Dart was brought a piece of rock, we call it breccia, it's cemented rock, looked like, this is a reconstruction that was done by Professor Ron Clark. And Raymond Dart was brought this and told there's a big baboon. And he was then shown some bone in there that he looked at and immediately thought, this is actually not a baboon. It's not a human, and it's not some other type of ape. It is something that's a bit more special. He prepared it out with his wife's knitting needles, and just to give you an idea, this is a cast of that. You saw that at the back, and there's a lower jaw over here. And we're just looking at that. And once he'd prepared it out, there was a small lower jaw of a child of about 5 years old, a face, and quite remarkably also a brain endocast, which is not the real brain, it is a natural mold of the brain, because the inside of your skull takes on the shape of your brain, and that is a almost perfect copy of that. You can see on this side that it hasn't completely, it wasn't complete. It's like a mini cave, and it's probably a few 100,000 years short of being complete. You can see the calcium carbonate crystals that are formed over there, like a mini cave. Okay. So that is the Tong Child. When Dart tried to publish it in Nature, which was published early in 1925, The scientific community would not allow him to associate this with our origins, with the origins of humans. The reason being that they felt the brain was too small and we could not have originated from a small brain creature, and also that it came from Africa. There was a prejudice against Africa because the current thinking in 1924, 1925 was still that we originated in Europe and or Asia. And at the time, there was a specimen called Piltdown Man, which came from England. And that was accepted as being evidence for our origins in Europe. But 25 years later, that was defunct when it was found out it was an absolute complete fraud. In the meanwhile, other specimens belonging to what Dart called Oropythecus africanus, the southern ape of Africa, were found, Mrs. Ples, etc., also findings in East Africa, and eventually they discovered that the Piltdown Man was a human skull that had been modified and an orangutan's lower jaw that had been made to look old and strange. A huge embarrassment to the scientific community and probably one of the world's biggest frauds in science. So Darts thought that this was associated with us, was vindicated, but 25 years later, and obviously attention then turned to Africa. Professor Philip Tobias, who I pointed out earlier, he said, Africa gave us humanity, and that is no small thing. And that is quite a profound statement. Okay, so let us move around to this side to another very important discovery, which was made by Professor Ron Clark, and that is popularly known as Littlefoot. The reason why it was called Littlefoot was that Professor Clark found these little foot bones in a box together with other animal bones many years ago. He initially described those bones as belonging to a bipedal hominin, in other words, a creature that walks upright, very similar to us. Years later, he discovered the rest of the skeleton. It took 21 years to excavate, and he called it Oropythecus prometheus, which is not a new species. It was a species identified by Raymond Dart, but he feels this falls into that particular Oropyth species. Keep in mind the Tong Child is also Oropythecus, but africanus, at about 2.5 million years. This is Oropythecus prometheus, and is dated between 3.4 and 3.6 million years. It would now be South Africa's most complete Oropyth skeleton. In fact, it is the world's most complete Oropyth skeleton. And if the date indeed is correct, it would be South Africa's oldest hominid to date. Okay. Then we moved to 2008, which was a date I mentioned before when we were still with relatively few fossils. Professor Lee R. Berger discovered this particular individual. In fact, there's two individuals, associated skeletons, which was called Oropythecus sadiba, and is dated at just under 2 million years, 1.97 million years. It was described initially as a homo-like Oropyth, which is quite interesting because it has a lot of homo features, which falls into our genus. About half the scientific community felt it should be Homo, the other half felt it should be Oropythecus, but we generally accept that it falls within Oropythecus, but has a substantial number of Homo-like features. This is a young adult of about 11 years, an adolescent, and then on the other side we have an adult female. This is known as Malapahominin I, which will become more complete in the near future because they're actually finding more of this individual. And then we've got Malapahominin II, which is an adult female on this side. Similar to Littlefoot, this also has a complete hand, which is extremely rare in the fossil record, and of course a really useful part of the skeleton to tell us what did they exactly do. Here is a complete ankle complex of a heel bone that has some chimpanzee human-like features, an ankle bone that is quite human-like, and then a tibia, a leg bone that doesn't fit in anywhere. It's quite unusual. It's quite a thick inside of the ankle, which we think is associated with climbing. So this was a biped. It walked upright, similar to what we do, but not exactly the same. And it also could be quite comfortable in trees. We can tell that from the shoulder girdle. And for us, this is really important because we're now starting to find these more complete skeletons. Because if you find, for example, one finger bone and it is human-like, does not mean the rest of the skeleton is necessarily human-like. And then in 2013, Professor Berger also discovered another species called Hominoledi in a chamber out in the cradle. Deep under the ground in a small chamber, and quite a lot of this material. We've got around 3,200 specimens. This is all of this behind you here. I'm not going to take out any of the originals because it's actually very fragile. We do have a reconstruction here of Hominoledi, and you can clearly see that that is not a modern human, right? It's got a brain about the third the size of humans, very similar to the other hominins we have. Supraorbital torus, this brow ridge, which is very prominent. It's got a snouty nose, and the teeth are not the way we see in apes. There's no gap between the incisors and the canines. The canines are also smaller, and there's a mixture of features that are primitive and derived in those. So the interesting thing about this was it was dated at well under 500,000 years, so somewhere in the 240 to 340,000 time range. When you consider the Tong Child is 2.5 million years, Littlefoot is 3.6 million years, Sadiba is just under 2 million years, this falls within a time when modern humans were already around, or at least our archaic versions of us. So we didn't evolve from that for sure. They were living together with us. The other interesting thing is that the bones are not completely fossilized. They're actually quite organic. So we call them fossils, but theoretically they're not fossilized. And there's quite a lot of them. There's a lot of debate about Hominoledi at the moment in terms of how they got into the cave, because there were no other animals found there. That's the first time we've had that in South Africa. All these other hominins, you find thousands of other animal bones associated with them. But in this case, there's nothing, only Hominoledi. And they're all deposited in this small area. And the hypothesis is that in fact they were interring each other in that cave. They also didn't get into the cave all in one go. So that is a debate that's currently raging, and there are some papers in review on that, and a lot of interesting discussion.
Right, I'm Cella Niger, the Fossil Collections Manager at the Evolutionary Studies Institute. I'm responsible for the curation and conservation of the fossil material that we house here at the Institute. So right now I'm going to take you down to the Karu fossil store, where I'm going to show you some of the treasures that we keep down there. Right, well, welcome to the Karu fossil store, and this here is what we call the study hall or research area. So it's a multi-purpose room because it is the room where we also sort out the material that comes from the field. As you can see, some of the material that recently came from the field with plaster jackets on them. This here is a mammal ancestor, it's a therapsid. This here is the skull, the front part there, the eye orbit, and then the temporal openings, and then some of the postcranial elements of this animal. So the plaster jacket is for holding this fossil together as we transport it from wherever we find it all the way back to Joburg. As you can see, there are a lot of cracks here. So without this plaster, the fossil would have just crumbled on the way. So what happens here, when the material comes from the field, we do what we call accessioning. So where you enter all the information from the collector's field notebook about where the fossil was found, who found it, all the details pertaining to that fossil. So that is the accessioning. And then the next stage then would be cataloging the material. So where now we give each individual specimen its unique identification number, so to speak, where all the details about it are captured and are associated with that number, and we store that information in an electronic database. So whenever you punch that number, just like your identity number at Home Affairs, when they punch your number, all the details about you will then come on the screen. So that's exactly what we do when we give these specimens those unique numbers.
Okay, so you're gonna show now the being scanned, okay?
Yeah.
It's amazing the international people that you have. You got people here from all over the world. Yes. And they come to Wits, they don't go to other universities, eh? That just shows how powerful Wits is on the global stage. Okay guys, so we're gonna show you now eggs, dinosaur eggs, well preserved from the Free State. They are coming from the Golden Gate National Park, guys. You're gonna see the preservation work that these guys did. It's so amazing. You're gonna see all the details on the egg. It's just mind-blowing, guys.
Right, so this is a clutch of eggs, and it comes from the Free State province of South Africa at a place called Clarence at the Golden Gate Highlands National Park. So it's a clutch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and possibly 7 eggs of a dinosaur called Massospondylus carinatus, that fossil that we have at the foyer there. So 2 of these eggs have embryos in them, this one and that one. So here, that's the skull of the embryo, the neck, vertebra, we have ribs there, and we have some limb bones. Then here it's some cranial material there with a bit of neck and some limbs and a bit of vertebra and some ribs. Right. So these have been studied extensively. They were taken to the synchrotron scan in France. So the scientists who study these looked at the finer details of these embryos and published on them.
Yeah.
Right. So this display case shows the different species of a therapsid called Tilstrosaurus. The interesting part about Tilstrosaurus is that when that extinction event happened from the Permian into the Triassic, what we call the PT extinction event, most of the animals were wiped out. They didn't cross over into the Triassic from the Permian. But this group, some of the species were able to cross over into the Triassic, and it's called Tilstrosaurus. So that's what's important about this group of dinosaurs.
Okay, right now I'm going to take you into the fossil preparation laboratory. This is where the fossils are cleaned. When we say cleaned, we mean the separation of the surrounding rock matrix from the fossil itself. So let's go through.
My name is Charlton Dube, research technician here, meaning I clean fossils. In the real terms, it's called fossil preparation. So I prepare fossils, separating rock from the real fossil, going according to what's required by research. Say they need to look at the palate, you concentrate on the palate. If they need to work on the teeth, you concentrate on the teeth. Wherever you are directed to work for research purposes. But there are many times where one can open up the whole skull or skeleton for different purposes. Research mostly, and maybe some times for display, or maybe it's just the best of them all so far that would have been found. The reality is that fossils are found in the field. Our Karu, as vast as it is, stretching probably to other countries as well. Then if scientists go and collect those fossils, and then they are dug properly, carefully, with certain instructions, and then plastered. I don't have okay, I've got an example here which has already been cut. This part was there on top, and then this was your bottom thing. And then when they are brought here, then we cut them to see what's in there. Of course, with the instructions of those who dug it, they have to tell you how it was lying, where could be the bones, are they on this side or that side, what could be there, the skull or the whole skeleton. So dependent on such things. Then once opened, then they are delegated to different people according to their expertise or service as such, or skills. Okay, this is my colleague Gladys Ndlovu, one of the most long-serving technicians here. She's working on a dinosaur limbs, though yet not identified, so we are not accurate or specific as to what limbs they are, but of course leg limbs. That's why she's cleaning them up, so that scientists are able to identify them. That's the whole purpose of cleaning them. So these limbs came all the way from the Eastern Cape, plastered with plaster of Paris, the stuff that doctors use on our limbs when are broken. So we treat these fossils the same way, very careful, especially in transporting them. We have got to be their doctors in that sense.
Guys, such an honor to be here, I must say. And imagine the celebration that must be in the Eastern Cape in Kameha. Actually, it will be one of the biggest, or probably the biggest dinosaur graveyard in the world, guys. I can imagine the celebration when they find bones, guys. It is amazing. Just to give you guys an idea, put a skeleton together takes decades. Excavation, identification, and put everything together, guys. It's really hard work.
Right here is a proudly South African dinosaur called Massospondylus carinatus, nicknamed Big Mama. So this is the skull, the head. There is the very long neck, the vertebra, that is the backbone. The forelimb with the scapula there, humerus, and the radius ulna, and the hand. Then we have some ribs. Then we have the crushed pelvis, which now is a bit squashed like this, with the remains of the proximal femur in this socket. Yes.
Guys, I just want to mention, I was speaking with Sipfell regarding that, which is, think about how many species were wiped out by global extinction events, but there were subdivisions inside of these animals, and their descendants nowadays, like, crocodiles, dogs, they are still here to tell the story, guys. It's just overwhelming what I'm learning today, and I'm so honored to be here with you, Sipfell. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Again, would you like to say anything else before we actually finish this video?
No, besides saying it was actually an honor to host you here, to share our story, it's not our story per se, it's the story told by these fossils.
By our planet.
Yes, so where we came from, where we are today, the extinction events that these animals went through, and what may possibly happen in future if we don't take good care of the environment we live in. We can all go extinct.
You said everything. You know, this is a clear idea what can happen, guys, if you don't take care of the environment, of the planet. Of course, there are things we can't really control, right? Like global extinction events, the cycles of our planet. But again, guys, I hope you guys enjoy these videos. Let us know down below what you think. Again, make sure to share, subscribe, and destroy that like button. And I will see you in the next LivinginSAtv video.